Good evening, everyone. Yang Yan Zhao back again. We are here with the first broadcast of year 2026. We have an extra special guest tonight. Uh, we will see if he can convert us over to his way of thinking about tabletop role playing games as he utilizes various methods of creating terrain and excellent home gaming whatnots. But real quick, I just want to give a shout out to a fabulous Kickstarter that is closing out. I think it's got about 12 hours left. Horace H. Hoover. Horace is a spiritual detective who has headgear that looks an awful lot like a Hoover vacuum. Sorry, let me. That's what I wanted. There we go. So we have Horace H. Hoover #4. It is definitely an indie book. I would say somewhat in the vein of The Tick, where things are actually funny, even though it's not a ha ha fat man fell down kind of funny. We've got fantastic writing. There is great art, and go check it out. If you want someone whose artwork is somewhere between John Buscema and Bernie Wrightson, then this might be for you. He's on issue 4, but of course you can buy them all. So go check out Horace H. Hoover. I personally recommend it, and I think most people will like it. But now we have the man of the hour, the extra special guest. He is 1/3 of the Nerd Council of Doom, keeping law and order on the Great White North. But today, he is here as the Cardinal of Crafting, the Theologian of Terrain, and the Bishop of BBGGs, Big Bad Good Guys. We have the Dungeon Minister.
Oh, hello. Hello. Welcome to my library. How are you doing, Young?
I am excellent now. So, before we get started in the crafting terrain, let's talk just a little bit about crafting your environment. So you are in the process of moving.
Yes. Yes, I actually have pretty well finished it by now, I think. Sorry, I can't hear myself if I have that on. I've pretty well finished it. For 4 years I've been filming it in a room in the basement of our church office. It's the little house beside the church. It used to be the rectory. The rector doesn't live there anymore, and so it's office space. But there was an unused room downstairs, and when I first started the channel during lockdowns, I set up my studio down there, and it kind of grew as I went. I started putting up curtains for sound, to keep the bounce down, and I got all sorts of stuff on my table for the studio and lights and all this kind of stuff. And the room is just not really it doesn't work anymore. It's not accessible all the time, etc. So I decided I'd build a studio in our basement here, and this house is built in the 1800s, and it's a hand dug basement, with a stone foundation, stone basement walls. I have to crouch to get around down there, right? It's 6'1", so I'm hitting my head all the time. So it wasn't the likeliest place, but I'll be darned, it actually ended up looking a lot like the space that I left. So I managed to pull it off. So I just actually recorded my first recap down there, and looking at it compared to old footage, it's really close. So yeah, that's what I've been up to for Christmas vacation.
And I have to say, it does look like, or I shouldn't say does. It did look like the typical, very scary, Eastern Midwestern style basement that you might see from the 1800s. But it actually looks pretty darn good. I was afraid
Mm.
you might get stuck in there. Do
Well,
you
I
ever?
tell you, if you turn the camera about 3 degrees, it's scary again because I got just enough set to fill up the frame, and then you go a little bit over, and it's back to scary.
Um, that kind of reminds me of our buddy, the Dungeon Delver. If he turns his camera like 5 degrees, you see his laundry or
Washing machine, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's it. But that's TV, right? I mean, that's like a TV thing. My I series of coincidences. I ended up knowing a bunch of TV people, like local TV people, right? And so the affiliates back. I don't even know if they have affiliates anymore. Is that a thing anymore in the digital age? Anyway,
Somehow,
and
yes.
I would go down there, and the set that looked like this big open thing was about that deep, and ended 2 inches off camera. That was it. It was interesting. So
Hmm. Do you ever see yourself like remaking it? So it's like you've got books down there. Like I don't know how that would work out like mold wise, but
it's actually it is a very dry basement for all of that.
yeah.
And I found out today. I found out why. Actually, I was out walking the dog and talking to the neighbor, and he said he's got to go help his daughter because her basement is flooding. And I asked him, "Does your basement ever flood? Because ours doesn't, and I'm not sure why. It feels like it should." And he said, it's because the ground here is sand and gravel, and so the water just drains away. It never pools, right? There's good topsoil. The topsoil is really deep. It's like a foot deep because it's again 1800s, right? It's been undisturbed and things have been dying there and piling up for all these years. But yeah, the soil is so sandy that it drains away. So there's not a mold problem, but there is a spider thing and a dust thing. The walls have this paint on it, which I'm sure is gobs of lead in it and everything else. And whenever people move, I mean, I've got 3 boys, and so Touchberry, my middle guy, likes to run up and down the house making explosion sounds. He does it less now. He did it more a couple years ago. And but when he does that, a rain of dust comes down on things. I wouldn't trust putting anything down there that was paper. so so yeah, I'm really. It has everything that the old studio had now. It has everything that I had before. And for a book background, when I do live streams, I sit here, so I still have that for here. But yeah, no, it's pretty well done in my head. I still have a bunch of dirt in the corner I have to scoop up and get rid of from when they brought the furnace down.
Mhm.
The furnace line, the chimney stack, which is added to the building because, of course, it was a pot-bellied stove before, and there was
Cool.
different chimneys. The
Cool.
pot-bellied stove was just in the next room over from me, and it went through to the second floor and then split off, and the upstairs was heated from the pipe.
I
But
kind of that in my house actually.
yeah, that's like an old house kind of thing. It was typical. But anyway, that's all was taken out long, long ago. The furnace was put in. But when they dug in the vent to go to the chimney, which is a chimney tacked onto the building, when they dug that, they just left all the dirt. They just pushed through and just left the dirt there. So, and there's a dead bird. I don't know how the dead bird got in there, but so there's some cleanup still to do.
Fair, fair. So, we do share the Nerd Council of Doom, which, by the way, the next episode is January 24 at the Nerd Council of Doom over here on YouTube. But we're talking about a little bit more pop culture,
Yeah.
and some other things. We do talk about tabletop games, of course, but we don't really do a lot of deep dives unless
No,
there's
it's a news roundup kind of thing, isn't it?
yeah.
Sort of news analysis, nerd analysis.
Exactly. So one thing, for anyone who is new to the channel, I did a Kickstarter for Empire of the Undying Sun, which is my campaign setting for 5th and 1st editions. Just on Kickstarter, keep your eye out. But when I was doing a lot of research for that, because I was really trying to figure out what made those old 80s games a lot of fun.
Mhm.
One thing that I kept coming across either with direct mentions or in a lot of photographs, were people who made their own terrain. Like I think
Yeah.
almost anyone who plays at a tabletop will get a mini at some point, but like at least back in the day, crafting these big dioramas, uh, like, oh, they're in a castle. I'll go build a castle. Like
Right.
that seemed like it's part of the thing. And to me, there's a whole lot of charm that's missing in modern gaming due to not having those. I don't know if I want to say visual aids, but the physicality of it. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you play online, it's going to be digital by nature. Yeah.
yeah, and to me, it's one of the things that really separates tabletop role playing games versus sort of like an advanced RPG uh,
Mhm.
video game with the online stuff. So, how did you first get into crafting?
Well, it was actually not in the 80s. It was not back in the old days. When I played as a teenager, I was a DM way back then too, and uh, it was all theater of the mind. I would occasionally draw out a map for the players, but I was enormously forgiving about letting them know how to go back the way they came. In reality, if you're in a cave, if you're in a place that's all stone, you're going to start to lose where you are. Landmarks are tough to come by.
Yeah,
So but I just wanted to get on with the game. I didn't want to, we were teenagers. I didn't want to, count how many torches they'd been through. I didn't want to track their food. I didn't want to worry about a map. This just wasn't any interest to me. I was impatient. So we didn't do that. I did collect minis though. I collected them and I kept them on my dresser in my bedroom. Of huge, not huge, a pretty big collection of mostly Grenadier minis,
oh wow.
and they sold them at the same bookstore that I bought the box sets at. Was a little independent bookshop in downtown Janesville, and I would go do my paper route, and I would on collection days I'd collect a little bit, then I'd go down there and blow it all. you know. So I had a bunch of minis, but we never used them in gaming. They just sat on my dresser, and I never painted them. I didn't trust myself to paint a metal mini in anything that would have looked good. And I mentioned being impatient. I would have done a terrible job. I'm still with my minis because they're so fiddly and small, and I eventually just go, oh, and I'm done with it.
Hmm.
Um, so I just kept them and to me, they were more like statues instead of being. And of course, that said, in the antique, in the Middle Ages, in antiquity, they painted the statues too. But to me, they were like plain stone statues or these metal statues that, yeah, they didn't look. They looked real in their details and modeling, but they didn't appear lifelike because they were just pewter, you know. Um, but so that never was a thing for me then. When I got into crafting was when I began playing with my boys, which is a few years ago. And um, actually, the first thing I crafted wasn't terrain at all. I went online looking for, well, what's going on in D&D now, and I discovered there was a fifth edition, and I hadn't even known there was a third or a fourth, or really even a second. Um, and for a while, I was confused about where Basic fit into that family. I really didn't. I mean, I played the game I played when I was a kid. I knew there was an AD&D, but I didn't do much with it. Um, so the first thing actually I crafted, I found a channel. I wish I could remember the name of the channel. He's a neat guy. He does crafty stuff. He was making a dice tower, and I'd never heard of a dice tower. No one had dice towers when I was playing. At least I didn't. But when we started playing, my youngest was 6. And I don't know if you've ever gamed with a 6-year-old, but the dice hit the floor a lot. And we play in our kitchen right next to the refrigerator, and that is very heavy, and it's just high enough for a dice to go under. So I decided I'm going to make a dice tower. So I crafted a little, here it is, a little
Nice.
dice tower, right? It's a real simple kind of thing made out of a Pringles can. Yeah, and yeah, so it's just something to make. So I made one of those, and then I made another one and filmed myself making it and put it up on the channel. Um, and later, much later, I gave that out as a drawing when we hit 1,000 subs. But so that was the first thing, and I didn't really do the next thing. I did another, actually did another dice tower as the next thing in a. It's the same channel, and he had this idea of getting these fake books, and then you build a little thing that goes in it.
Nice.
Right, and then you got where's the camera? There you go. Put felt in the bottom so it doesn't make too much noise. But I just did those again. I did the first tower because Bob Johnny was, and really all three of them were losing dice off the table all the time. It was just easier, and I thought it looked cool, so I did that. And I thought the book idea was cool, so I did that. But that was about it. And I saw channels like Black Magic Craft. That's probably the most famous one. Battle and Barrow. Battle and Barrow is another great channel. At that time, those are the ones I would watch, and they made all sorts of stuff. Realistic looking houses and castles and all this. And I thought that looks really cool, but that's insane. That's so much work, But I was finding that playing with kids, especially the attention span, especially 6 years old, the attention span was.
Yeah.
So if I had something on the table, it was going to capture them. And I found minis to match their characters, metal.
Nice.
Never painted those. And then I said, okay, well, I just get paper and I would draw the dungeon out on a piece of paper. And I found, here's a trick in case you're on the cheap and you want to do this. A lot of Christmas wrapping paper has a 1-inch grid on the back. So you just lay it down upside down. You go out, you get a roll of Christmas wrapping paper, especially after Christmas when it's on clearance. You can get it for cheap. And you've got like 10 sessions worth of paper there, and you can draw out your little maps. But I would do that for a while. And I started to think, they'd probably think it was pretty cool if there was like dungeon tiles or some terrain. Mm-hmm. So I ended up starting to do stuff. And I got a lot of my ideas from Black Magic Craft, a lot of my ideas from Battle and Barrow. And I started cranking. And the reward there was I'd bring it to the table. I kept it secret. I'd do it at night once they were in bed. And then I'd put it down on the table. And I'd get this, whoa, cool, And that was worth it. That was really worth it.
You're like the Santa of D&D terrain.
Yes, sort of. Well, you know what? I realized this about myself. I mean, my first career was as an actor, a stage actor. Now I'm a priest, and both of those are at least part of the priest's job is a performance. It's in front of people speaking and creating an event. The difference, of course, is when you play Hamlet, you don't believe that you're actually a Danish prince. You don't believe the story, you're telling it, but there is a sense of presentation and of bringing people into an experience. And I found that as well running Claricon, my convention, bringing in people into this experience and giving them this, and with the channel as well. So it really is about, laying down something that can be engaging and draw people in, right? So that's why I started doing it. That's why I kept doing it too. So.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So it's interesting you say your first project was a Pringles can.
Yeah, I love Pringles.
How important is thrifting to the creation? Because I have to say that I've watched various channels over the years, and I've watched various D&D live streams. Like I remember one of Acquisitions Inc., where they were on this like flying ship, and like the ship looked too good. Like, you know what I mean? Like if it's too good, my imagination is not really going to fire. Like
right.
To be good and look like the thing it should, but like it needs to be a little bit not quite
a little janky.
a little janky. And I'm just wondering, like, if you're like, okay, Pringles can, old newspapers, Christmas wrapping paper, old
Right.
refrigerator boxes, like how important is it in the reuse?
You know what? The Pringles can is entirely because of its structure. It's the right size, it's the right shape, and it's workable. It's not a metal tube or anything. You can cut it easily. It's easy to work with, and you get to eat Pringles first. So we actually call them tube chips because we live across the street from a store that sells. They have a store brand of chips, and
Mhm.
so we still kind of a no name thing.
Mm, cool.
And so they're half the price, and they taste almost identical. So that's what we buy, and so I just call them tube chips. But anytime I can eat any Pringles like chip is a good day. So um, there was a hidden agenda there, but no, it was really just for form. It had nothing to do with being cheap, although crafting terrain is often about because you can get STLs and print off wonderful things. Once you own a printer, that can be pretty cheap. But you
Mhm.
have to buy a printer, a 3D printer. Those are relatively expensive. And before
Yeah.
3D printers came around and were, ubiquitous, you could buy Dwarven Forge, but that was really expensive. It looks awesome when you put it on the table. Dwarven Forge stuff looks really good, but it costs an arm and a leg. So crafting your own stuff is, first of all, the fun of doing it. Second of all, um, getting something real specific,
Mm.
right? That you want this specific look and you can achieve it. And then the third is it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. So there really wasn't I mean, the primary driver wasn't to be thrifty, but it doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah, and to me, like I'm not gonna say bad things about Dwarven Forge because they look awesome.
It does.
But but just like with a lot of the digital games,
Mhm.
everything looks very much the same, because a lot of people are sharing the same assets. I
Yeah.
think the physical stuff is getting like that too,
Yeah.
except for the crafters. Because with the crafters, there's always like, whoops, my knife slipped, and now it becomes like, a feature of the wall,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Well, and even if it's not an accident, not a mistake, it's just you want so I did a thing, it was a while back now. I wanted some standing stones with a sort of magic portal in the middle of them, right? And so I did. Yeah, I'm going to turn my light off. Well, that'll help. I did this little thing of standing stones, right? And it's just a tea light
yeah.
sticks in the bottom, but there wasn't one just like this, right? There would have been standing stones. I'm sure you could print off standing stones, but not this exact thing. This is what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I was able to make this exact thing. Um, that's part of it for me. That's actually the most of it for me. If there was a cheap, um, a cheap version of exactly what I wanted, I probably would just buy it. But
Hmm.
Dwarven Forge looks fabulous, but it looks fabulous on a table in a house. If I bought as much Dwarven Forge as I have crafted stuff, we would not afford the house or the table, and we'd be out on the street. And then it wouldn't look as good.
Um, yeah, I don't know. So we had old school gamer up here, and mentioned, have you guys read about the folk gaming movement?
Folk
And
gaming.
then later he
Oh.
explains, so folk is disconnecting from the profit motivation and home crafting, like the Padres Pringles. Um, I'm,
Pringles, that's the brand I'm going to launch. I'll be sued, but I'll launch it.
what you should do? You should put little holes in them and call them Padres Holy Pringles, and
Holy, yeah.
you save money because you're cutting out little pieces of it.
What I like there is I can both get sued by Pringles and reprimanded by the bishop for being irreverent. I like that. In one swell foop, I can get in trouble in two different directions. I like that.
That's right. Um, well, for me, old school gamer, I'm not gonna crap on people who want to make money in the
No.
hobby. because I would like to make money in the hobby. But for one thing, if someone's making money, it's an incentive to keep producing things. I think
Yeah.
when you're so far ahead and you have a monopoly, like a certain company that begins with W, things can go horribly awry. But at least at the small producer level,
Yeah.
like, people
Yeah.
have to make a certain amount of money just to make it worth it to produce things,
Yeah.
pictures, items, whatever, for other people.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of terrain, I simply could not afford to put terrain on the table
Yeah.
at least not in the proportions and the stuff that I've done that I wouldn't be able to do the things I've done if I was buying it. So
Poor Orc Child says, I have Dwarven Forge and Dungeons and Lasers. I've never heard of Dungeons and Lasers. I'm going to have to check that out.
I have heard of Dungeons and Lasers, but I don't remember in what context. I see Squirrel Hermits out there, Ruovsky, Poor Orc Child. I know a lot of these folks. Hi, everybody. Hi.
So, do you think that they have? So they have certain applications that they have helped with your home game, such as kids not throwing dice on the floor as much.
Very practical.
Do you think that they've added to the story and the feel? And I would say part of it being the buy-in from your kids, but also like the memorability. Do you think it helps them like 3 years later? They're like,
oh, absolutely. So I was getting ready for this and I was pulling out some of the pieces that I've done to kind of like, well, show and tell, right? And the reactions as I'm pulling bits out, oh, that was so cool. That battle was so awesome. One of them, this is probably the most intricate thing I've done, was the Goblin War Wagon.
ooh,
And it's steam powered, not really, obviously. That's just a large Kinder Egg inside. But
sorry, we don't have those down here.
oh no, they're outlawed. And it's got, this chain wheel on the front, these lashing chains and spikes everywhere. And you load this with a bunch of goblin minis perched on every available surface, with spears and bow and arrow and everything else and axes. And it really looks wicked. Oh, this is also, it's made out of popsicle sticks and skewers, bamboo skewers.
Oh.
The caps from what's that drink? Black Fly. It's a flavored vodka drink. Scraps of leather that I had. I mean, it's just junk, but and a Kinder Egg. I did take the toy out first, but anyway, and that ended up being just a fabulous session when they fought this thing, and extremely memorable. And they would have remembered the session if they were just fighting the war wagon, but putting the thing down. What it does is it helps activate the imagination, right? Because the thing on the table isn't doing all the imagining for you, but it gives this anchor point to build off of. The thing doesn't actually move. The chains don't actually whip around, right? But it gives the anchor in the same way that when we were kids, the X-Wing, you'd press the button and it went, which is not what it does in the movies. I don't know if you noticed. And the Millennium Falcon made pretty much the same sound. But we didn't need it to do what toys like in the late 90s. The toys, you press the button and you get sound effects from the movie, right? We didn't need that. We just needed the thing that could channel all that imagination. And I find that the minis and the terrain all do that, really help. And there was someone who was arguing against minis and really, really offended him that anyone used minis in the game. And saying you should be able to imagine it yourself. And I said, well, okay, when you buy a new role-playing game, and you go to buy a game, do you like the artwork in it? Oh yeah, the artwork's part of the whole thing. Okay, that's doing the same thing. You look at Larry Elmore, that fabulous Red Dragon cover that captured so many of us. You look at the Errol Otis stuff. That is a doorway for your imagination. And so when you sit there at the table and you're rolling the dice and you're moving, your jujube around the because you don't have minis or whatever, you've got that illustration in your head.
Yeah.
So the minis, the terrain, they're just doing the same thing, right? They're just giving you something to chew on as you build the story, as you imagine all this stuff, right?
Yes, and I think it also helps people with imagination.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of psychology papers which I've read in recent years because I didn't realize that people can't see things in their head all the
Some
time.
people can't. Some people can't. I really don't see stuff in my head.
And I think kids need to train that, which
Mhm.
is why a lot of earlier stuff like comics and picture books and, figurines, or like they used to have those little toy soldier things. I think that's very important because, like see this, okay, then they can like mentally sort to manipulate it and then, make more in their minds.
Yeah.
Practicing imagination, if you will.
Yeah.
So to me, this is like, especially if you have people who aren't super into fantasy and they've never played a tabletop role playing game. You see that goblin wagon coming out, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
boom, it's right
Yeah.
there in your mind.
Yeah, well, and it is giving the It's like teaching someone to speak. You have to give them the vocabulary first, which is why role playing games are illustrated. Because how do you know what a bugbear looks like? You're right. You could describe it in words, but with half of the space and much quicker, boom, there's the picture. That's a bugbear, right?
Yeah.
Dragons, we've kind of seen dragons in various places, but there it is. We've seen them. We know what a dragon looks like. So when you say dragon, you've got a picture in your head because you've seen 15 million depictions of dragons. So I think it just is it's vocabularies for the imagination. The other thing is, someone mentioned here, minis for battles. Good heavens, does it help to track? And you realize you're going through a battle and someone's been switching targets between this orc and that orc, and then you really rewind and say, "Hang on, those orcs are like 40 feet apart. What are you doing? Ping-ponging back and forth. What are you doing?" It really helps. No, you can't actually shoot this guy. He's like around the corner from you. You can't. You're in the middle of a crowd. You can't. You're going to kill somebody, right? So it helps to clarify just on a technical basis. Yeah. But I would go further, because if that was the only thing it did, well, then you could just use candy, and then when you kill the orc, you eat the candy. But when it does evoke a certain feeling, when it gives that sense of where you are and who is there, it just feeds, it just throws more coal on the fire of the imagination, right? And the engine just churns. So anyway, hey, Squirrel, you have a good rest. Give Zach my best.
Yeah, and the other thing too is there are only a certain number of things that people can hold in their mind at the same time. Like usually most people can't remember 10 numbers in a row. So, once you have a certain number of characters on that battle map, if you've got 5-6 people in the party and you're fighting 5-6 orcs, that's a lot to keep track of.
It is. And I've had situations when it is theater of the mind, either because the players went off into some direction I could not possibly have predicted, so I didn't have any terrain, or I just I don't do terrain for every session, every game, anything like that.
Yeah.
I know some people do. They like really need to have everything on the table, which is cool, but I don't do that. I do set pieces. I do the punch pieces, but I can't remember exactly what the situation was now. It was a while ago, but we got to a point where I realized that I had one idea that I was describing, and it's like the telephone game. One player had interpreted it one way, which is close to what I was saying. And actually the rest of the group, but it came down to 2 people. The rest of the group kind of got that as well, but one player had a totally different idea of what I was saying. And maybe it was my description. Maybe it was this guy, because again, most of the group was closer to my idea of what was going on this other guy was like way out in left field. And so, if you have something on the table, whether it's just lines on a piece of paper, it at least gets people in the same mental space so they understand what's going on. But that goes back to tracking complexity kind of thing, right?
So if someone wanted to get into crafting,
Mhm.
what do you recommend? Good places to learn, good tools to have, other than knockoff Pringles, good materials.
Well, first thing you need, most terrain is going to be sculpted out of foam because it's cheap and it's light. You can make a pretty substantial build and you can still carry it around and move it to the table. So you want one of these, an alpha knife or something similar. Retractable blade for safety, snap off blades because even foam will dull them. You want those, and because you don't want to destroy your furniture, some version of a cutting mat. I have small ones up to really, really big ones for really big projects. Those are the two things you'd start off with. And glue, like PVA glue, hot glue, a hot glue gun. Don't try to use super glue on foam. It melts it. Usually just melts it. And then you'll need some kind of paint. I just use craft paints like you can get at the dollar store because they're cheap. I've just been given by a couple of friends online. I've just been given paints and washes for minis. I will never use those paints on terrain because the bottles are tiny, which is fine because minis are tiny and you don't need much paint to cover a mini. But if you were trying to do a castle with that, it would be absurd. But so for terrain, craft paint, and then you want foam board, foam core. That's the kind of stuff you used to do science projects. You'd set up like a diorama. You set up a little thing that had the phases of the moon on there. But what you want, if you can find it, is ready board, because this stuff is not as well made as some of the other stuff. And that's good because the paper peels off really easily. You don't want the paper on there. You want to get to the foam underneath because the foam underneath will take texture. So, and those things, the knife, the cutting board, some foam core. This was $2.50 at a local dollar store. That's enough to start. Then you can go up to like XPS foam, like this pink stuff that's used for insulation board, and they sell it in thicker widths as well. You can go up to that for bigger builds. Those are the big things, and then popsicle sticks, coffee stirrers, bamboo skewers, toothpicks, blah 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 blah. Right? You can go into milliput or clay or green stuff, all this, all sorts of other things. They sell flocking, but you can make your own flocking out of sawdust and green paint if you want to. There's all sorts of things you can go down. You can get a hot wire cutter like this. It's like a handheld one. They're really useful. Nice. But you can also get a table, like a hot wire table. They're expensive. You wouldn't get that unless you had done quite a bit of crafting and you're like, yep, this is what I want to do. All of those tools are out there, but if you're just starting, alpha knife, cutting pad, and some foam core and take off, right?
So, really for like $20, you can be off and running.
Oh, not even 20, $10. 10. But what does an alpha knife cost? Like $3-4? You get this. I got this at a dollar store. It was probably $1. For cutting board, cutting mat. And you wouldn't even need, if you have a scrap of plywood, you could just use that to cut on. Just don't do it on your kitchen table or your wife will mention it to you. And it won't be in a happy voice that she mentions it. And again, the foam is like $2.50 a sheet. I did a project that, one of my first projects is terribly ambitious, but it was something that Black Magic Craft did. It was a tower with a kind of corkscrew staircase around it, and it was in levels, so you could stack it up as the tower got higher and higher, and it's just a neat thing. And that was just made out of foam core, like 8 sheets of foam core, but again, a couple bucks per sheet. It was nothing. So yeah, you could be off and running for $10, really.
Nice.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, and when you get to the paint, you want black paint, you want gray or brown, depending on if you want your stones to be gray or brown, and then you want a lighter color of the same, either gray or brown, and then white. And so you just lay down. Just go watch the videos. There's lots of them out there. Black Magic Craft, Battle and Barrow, Dirty Basement Terrain. These are all good ones. Cleric's Creations, Carl makes stuff. There's a bunch of good ones out there. You'll find, and there's probably ones that are more famous, but those are the ones I like, and I'd watch those if I were you.
I'm wondering too. So now you did mention that these were sort of your secret dad's hiding in the basement type projects where you would bring them out overnight so the kids didn't see. But as they're getting older, are these things that they work on with you?
Well, if I'm going to bring it to the table, I still like it to be a surprise for two reasons. One, for the wow factor.
Yeah.
But also because I don't want them to know what they're getting into, right? Because it's hard for adults to stop themselves from metagaming.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, DM Scotty's a good one too. It's hard for adults to not metagame, but if they see you doing this, then they know what they're going to fight, right? And they prepare their spells appropriately. You want it to be a surprise. You want it to still have that aspect. Technically, for game purposes, but also for the wow factor. That's always fun.
Okay, I guess I was just kind of wondering if
they do craft their own stuff, though. I will say that they do craft their own stuff. I won't go grab it, but like Touchberry made a castle wall that it was excellent, and actually we used it at the table when they went to the goblin caves that had been taken over by a dragon. The entrance was his. He had made that. Fleetwood has made some really cool stuff. He made a very cool graveyard, which we used in another game when these skeletons or ghosts really were rising out of their graves. We used his graveyard. So yes, they have done stuff. And maybe when they first started and they were much younger, the crafts were, oh, that looks really good. Yeah. But they've gotten much better at it. They're not doing as much of it now. Fleetwood went off to high school, and now he has a job, and so he's doing other stuff. But they still occasionally do things.
Okay, I was just kind of curious if crafting is something that you found good to keep the kids, like off the internet, or give them productive hobbies on those days when they're bored.
It is. I mean, I'll tell you, it's a two-edged sword. On the one hand, it's a great creative outlet. It's a great doing something, right? Not ingesting something from the idiot screen, not just passive, but actively doing something and creative, and inventing the story behind it. Because when you make something, you're often doing the same thing that a dungeon master does, writing an adventure. You're imagining, what was this tower, this ruined tower? What was it originally? Who built it? Why was it built? You've got all that stuff going on. And so that's always good. The other side of it, though, is that you end up with a shelf like that full of bins of terrain.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of this stuff is big, right? I mean, I didn't even get it out because it's in another shelf over there. It's this bridge across this chasm, and I've got two kind of rock piles in the sides of a mountain, and then this long thing that goes between them, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was very specialized to the event. We've never touched it since. So, what am I doing with this thing? Why do I still have this in my house? But so you end up with a lot of foam sitting around.
That is true.
So
I don't know if this is just my experience or if others people have experienced the same. But when I was living in Los Angeles, we my group primarily played at one local game store, and they had shelves and shelves of people's terrains.
yep, yeah.
You're moving, you're just not into the hobby anymore. Dump your used terrain there.
Yeah. Well, there's Rabowski mentions auction at Claricon, and we have done that. Not if any of my stuff. Oh yes, actually, one of my things was auctioned there. It was a entrance to a cave made out of a skull, like a Halloween skull, like this.
Oh,
And you take the jaw off, and then you mount it in foam rocks, right, and make them look like rocks, and then the entrance is through the mouth, right? You can
nice.
go in that way, and that was auctioned off at the first Claricon. And speaking of game stores, it was purchased by the owner of the Hooded Goblin, which is our local game shop.
Oh,
It is on display just as you walk in. There's this glass case with all the big statues of superheroes and all that stuff, and my skull cave. So I'm pretty happy about that. Pretty chuffed. So yeah, and then someone asked if I would ever trash my one-off. No. I am a hoarder. I am a dragon sitting on a pile of foam. I don't. I have got foam tucked in every crevice of this room, and other than that skull cave, which was so specific, I knew we were never going to use it again. But it was difficult to part with. I've never gotten rid of anything.
and remember, guys, if you missed the first few minutes, we talked about Dungeon Minister's basement. So he's got a whole basement you can stuff full of.
If I put it down there, you know what would happen? It would be chewed to pieces by mice. I just know it. I'd get down there and I'd find it all chewed through. I thought about it. I thought about putting stuff down there, but no.
The dollar store and get those plastic containers. Seal them in there.
Yeah.
So Cyrus asks, what do you use for scale?
What do I use for scale? I pretty much default to an inch for 5 feet. Even though, especially if you get into heroic scale minis, and one of our party is one of the minis is heroic scale. Bob Johnny is more like a 32, but we just sell that as Bob Johnny is an uncommonly tall elf. And it helps that the rest of the party is another elf and a human woman and a halfling. So, although elves tend to be in fantasy literature, they tend to be depicted as shorter than humans.
You're kind of a little muddled there a little bit.
Cutting out? Sorry.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, although in fantasy literature, elves are typically depicted as being slightly shorter than humans. We just fudge it with, Bob Johnny is an uncommonly tall elf, and the human in the situation is a woman, so they're shorter than men, so it all works out. We don't give it too much thought, but yeah, 5 inches for 5 feet per inch. So if I'm using this kind of foam, that's going to be approximately a 5-foot wall. I think it's a little shy of a full inch. Let me see. Yeah, it's no, it's this stuff's an inch on. The pink stuff I normally use is 5/8. No, it's 3/4. Anyway, it's not quite an inch, but it's close enough. But this is an inch exactly. So that's my scale. Then if I do a grid for the floor, which I sometimes do, if I'm doing a dungeon tile, I always do a gridded floor. It just helps when you're playing to see the dimensions.
Yeah, I don't want to make my players bring tape measures, or rulers.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that if you get like a short ruler. We've done that. We have a little 6-inch ruler, and we'll use it for when someone fires off a fireball, or I don't know, fireball, because they don't have that, but any area of effect spell, because it's a short enough ruler that you're not knocking everything down as you move it around on the board, and you can kind of hold it over and okay, that's roughly. Yeah, okay, you catch that. You catch all those kobolds. You get them in your sleep spell, for instance. But yeah, it can be a little fussy measuring stuff.
Yeah,
the grid does help.
I have back when I was playing in person, I have all those like a 45-degree cone, a 60-degree cone, and circles, so I
No.
can figure out the area of effect.
Yeah. Well, they sell stuff like little plastic rings to hang on the mini if the mini is held or charmed or it's like, wow. I suppose if you're doing a big battle and you need to remember who was held and who was not, and who was dead, and who, I guess it helps.
Yeah, I don't want to say for sure, but I almost think that a lot of that stuff came around from the Critical Role show.
Yeah.
I remember when it first came out, I didn't really see a whole lot of that stuff, and they were using like from like soda bottles that's left from the cap. That's what they were using to mark.
Yeah.
And like a year or two later, people were making like really nice things, like, oh, this purple one is held.
Well, that goes to the earlier comment about the folk playing and not turning everything into cash and prizes.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. So, what would you say your most ambitious project was?
Well, you already know the answer to that because I uploaded a picture. I shared a screen with you. Yeah. So this was the Keep on the Northern Sea. It actually featured in the second game we played, so it was never used when we played their adventure there. In fact, my home game has never gamed on this piece. This was something that I did for Claricon. It was a celebration of hitting 2,000 subscribers. And I said, I'm going to craft the Keep on the Northern Sea. It's the biggest building that they have regular interaction with because it's near Honeywood, which is the village that the campaign is set in or is centered in. And anytime they go north, they pass by it. It was originally occupied by gnolls and kobolds, the gnolls bossing the kobolds around. It later was taken over just by kobolds after they'd thrown off the shackles of the gnolls. And it is currently in my campaign where the Count of Kilmarnock, the great city in the north, who's been thrown out of his own city. His city was taken in siege, and he had to run for his life. It's where he is gathered and has a small army that he's building in preparation to retake his home. So I knew it was going to keep coming up. And that was a massive project. Massive. The entire thing measures more than over 3 foot by 3 foot. It's slightly over 3 by 3. And the walls are made out of this kind of foam, the thick, and it's 2 inches thick insulation foam. So it makes 10-foot thick walls, which is kind of typical on a D&D map. And the idea of it is that it was to be the base layer of a keep that would have been built taller, but the construction was halted. And so it's only one story. It comes apart into 4 panels. As you can see, it splits there, just held together with dowels to keep it from shifting around. Now the walls that span those junctions are held in place with magnets. They just pop in and then a magnet holds them in place so they don't get knocked over and stuff when you're playing. And actually, I think if you're on that, we'll see if this works. You'll be able to, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I can take you through some of the things I did. I had some tufts, and Fleetwood had bought the clump foliage. It's right there near the. So I did a little decorating with it, but so there you can see the grid, and it's a 1-inch grid. So that's 5 feet per inch. And in the background, the corner there, you see a fireplace. Fleetwood did that. That was his creation. And yeah, this was the most ambitious thing I've done. And it was ambitious, really not in terms of the work. It was ambitious in terms of the scale. Like, it's relatively simple, really, when it comes down to it. It's just so big. Probably the most ambitious thing in terms of complexity I did was that Goblin War Wagon. That was probably the most complicated thing I did. Fiddly, you know. But yeah, and it was great. Then I displayed it at Claricon, and then at last year, so I displayed it at Claricon 2024, and this last year at Claricon, I actually ended up using it in a game.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I ran a game that was set a couple hundred years in the past when the keep was being built, and so I actually put it on the table and we moved the minis around in it, which was pretty cool. That was pretty cool to do. Having built it and then never played in it, it was cool to be able to do that.
Do you have any plans for anything else coming up?
Yes, I had a while back. I had started. The funny thing is, by the time I get it built, we will be finished. The campaign is currently centered on a tower keep called Akagmar, and it's a keep with a palisade curtain wall. It's just a palisade around it, kind of Mott and Bailey sort of, but not quite, because the keep is part of the wall itself. But anyway, and I had made the palisade, just sticks that I cut up and I glued onto a piece of not muslin, rougher than muslin. What is that? Burlap straps. And so I glued them on so you could flex it. You could still form it. It would flex. And I built a tower and I built a gatehouse and everything like that. But I never got the keep itself done, the tower. So we played a while ago and I had a box of Shreddies, which is a Canadian breakfast cereal, something like shredded wheat. Not shredded wheat. What's it like? A little bit like Chex.
Oh, okay,
sort of. Anyway, this one of those double boxes, where you get it like the Costco. It's got 2 bags inside, and it was about the size that the tower would eventually be. So I plopped that down. So the last time we played, Bob Johnny said, please support our sponsor, Shreddies, sponsor of the Dungeon Ministers campaign. I see a picture. I've tried one of those texture rollers. I wonder if they'd work if you need to carve a pipe and heat it and melt the foam. Will it work? I've seen them used. Black Magic Craft uses them a lot. Battle and Barrow uses them sometimes. I think they would work very well on foam core. They might work on the pink foam. The stuff that the keep was made out of, I have to say, it was very dense, and so it was hard to carve. It would not have taken a roller at all. It would have just marked it up, but it wouldn't have done a nice texture. But the pink foam is pretty good for taking texture, and the foam core is excellent. So those would work really well. Model railroad stuff is good. It can be pricey. I tell you what is good for getting trees. If you want pine trees, they're probably leaving the stores now. In fact, I was at the dollar store yesterday, and they had the Easter candy out. Yep. Easter, not Valentine's Day, which is over a month away. Oh no, not even St. Patrick's Day, which is a couple months away. No, Easter. Anyway, so the Christmas stuff is all gone. But during Christmas, a lot of times dollar stores will have little pine trees covered in snow.
Mm-hmm.
They're good for, and you can soak the snow off of them if you want. They're pretty good.
And it might sound ghoulish, but estate sales. There are a lot of guys who are now leaving this world. Who grew up and they were big model train people, and a lot of them will have whole sets of trains and all the accoutrement. They pick up for next to nothing, since nobody does that anymore.
Very few. Well, you need to have a dedicated basement space, and I'm using mine as a studio, so I can't do a train set down there. But yeah, you just shop, model railroad stuff, any of that kind of thing, even to a lesser extent. But even the thing, it was a few years ago now. I don't think it's big anymore. But remember the sort of fairy gardens and people would buy a little door, and it'd be slightly curved, and you'd put it against a tree as if a fairy lived inside, and then they'd sell little mushrooms and little tables and little paths and fences and stuff. Well, I found a little archway and with a door in it, and that became a piece for they went into the Fey world. There was a sort of this gate which appeared, and it was just a fairy door thing. And I have found things there that look really good for hobbit hole kind of halfling homes.
Mm-hmm.
So you get creative. You go to dollar stores, you go to that kind of stuff. They put out the leftover Easter candy from last time. Yeah, Easter's April 5th. We are talking 3 months from now.
I know.
3, 4, no,
snowing
3 months. 3 months from now. Yeah. Like those peeps are going to be rock hard. Anyway. But the dollar store is a good place. And Halloween's another good time for the dollar store. Another good place is a place like Michael's. I don't know if you have Michael's in the States. You have it in Canada. Okay. Crafting place. But they also they'll also have like Christmas villages,
mm-hmm.
and they'll have Halloween villages. And after Halloween, the Halloween village stuff is cheap. I got a really good well with skulls and stuff on it that lights up inside, and I used that. I integrated it into a larger piece, and that went down really well. So you can get a lot of that kind of stuff there too.
So Michael Dale agrees with you on the hot wire knife.
Yes. They're good to have, It's not necessary, but they're nice.
And he also says most electronics packing foam would make excellent sci-fi terrain.
Yes, I thought that often. We don't play sci-fi, but if we did, yeah, you get anything that's packed in foam, electronics or whatever, and suddenly you've got all of this great. You just flip it upside down, and you have a cityscape, right?
Mm-hmm.
You might have to cut a few things away, use some heat to melt off where the numbers are stamped in, so you don't see these. Well, but the numbers might work too. You have big numbers on the wall, very kind of dystopian. There goes the 11 o'clock train. Right, you are midnight. So yeah, it could be really fun. I remember as a kid, I don't know what we got, but it was an octagon of foam. Maybe it was a light fixture, maybe it was a ceiling fan. I don't remember. But it was this octagon of foam with a hole in the center and kind of some structural bits inside. That became a bath toy for me. And I was a little kid, and this isn't like last week or anything. And I would have little figures inside, and then the center, they'd go diving, right? It was like an exploration platform, and they'd dive through the middle. It was great. But yeah, it could be a star base of some kind. Yeah.
Very cool. So another thing I've been wondering, most of the YouTubers who talk about gaming, it's, usually just them and their gaming hobby.
Mm-hmm.
On occasion, you'll find someone who's married and perhaps their spouse will be into it, but we very rarely hear about families. You have been documenting how your boys, at least, as they grow up, they are how their gaming adventures go. And I'm just wondering, the last time you were on was, I think, about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned certain things like when they started, you had to simplify things, but now your boys are older, and I'm wondering, have you sort of incorporated, I don't want to say adult things because that'll get us both into it, but more mature, more mature themes, I guess you'd say, or more adult. Well,
yeah, I mean it's so in that time they've also watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and although that's certainly not grimdark, it's not Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I were talking about that, like Game of Thrones or the HBO's Rome series.
Oh, yeah.
They're great. They're great TV. Well, Game of Thrones was until later seasons, but they're great TV. But there's no time you could watch those with your children. They're too young to see much of it now, and then when they're older, it's just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When the sex scenes come on, you're like just uncomfortable. Like, where do I look? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
wrong. But so the point there is, having consumed media that has more mature themes, I'm able to go there in the game as well. And then it really happened. It was sort of, it sort of happened on a gradual bouncing back and forth basis. The game would get a bit more mature, so they're ready for the media, which was a bit more mature, so they're ready for the game. So it was just about getting there. In a recent game, we had both a slaughter of orcs that was gruesome. I mean, it was, the descriptions of it truly became gruesome. Kind of funny because of how gruesome it was. It was just bodies stacking up, and orcs at the bottom still alive and suffocating under the weight of all the bodies, which is legitimate for like medieval warfare. I mean, that really would happen. The Battle of not Crécy, not Poitiers, Agincourt, where the French knights, many of them died suffocating in the mud. They weren't hit by an enemy. Their horse went down, they fell, they tripped, and they just drowned in mud. I mean, think of how horrible a way to die, with your own companions stepping on you to get to the enemy. Like, horrific. So that was in the game. But then probably the most cartoonish moment that we have had in the campaign to this date, I'm not going to tell you what it is, you'll have to watch the recap. The most cartoonish thing we've ever had in the game actually was in the same battle, but the next session, because the battle stretched over 2 sessions. So we had this horror show, like really gruesome, but again, funny because of how gruesome it was. When you're laughing about how awful a thing is.
Sure.
But it was really gruesome. But then the next game, this cartoon show, which is just silly. And the great thing is, I think this is D&D in general, you can get both in there and they both work, right? I mean, we've all been part of campaigns that got too goofy.
Mm-hmm.
For our tastes, maybe they got silly, goofy, and they weren't serious anymore. And then the DM's trying to be serious, and everyone's just or one of the players really wants to be serious, and the DM's just clowning around. But then you can also get in a campaign that takes itself so deadly serious that you wonder if anyone's having any fun at all. Like this feels like work now. This just feels like a job. So it's wonderful to be able to bounce back and forth. It's a wonderful sort of it's a wonderful playground in which to explore these things, right? So in a way, has it changed? Yes and no. They as players, let alone their age, they as players are becoming more serious. Their characters are advancing in power and prestige, and so they're taking on bigger and bigger things. They're getting involved in larger affairs. Like we're talking the movements of armies now, right? They're not quite leading those armies, but they're certainly participating in them. So they're involved in matters that will change the map at this point. So that comes with the game, right?
Yeah, that's one thing that interests me too, is the way the old school gaming worked, at least, was when you're at those lower levels, you're concerned with yourself.
Yep.
And then you have some concern for your party members. But then later, when you have domain play, of course, like, okay, well, now you're responsible for all of Honeywood.
Yeah.
Now you're responsible for all the kingdom. And it seems like, nobody wants to make it like boring family lecture time, but it does seem like a good way to introduce them to like greater responsibilities that they might have.
Yeah, well, I mean, all play is practicing for life, right? Even play that adults engage in.
Sure.
We're testing things out. We're exploring things. We're poking at the edges of what we can do. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a role-playing game out there where this happens. Sims seems to have been like that in terms of computer games, and I never understood why anyone played it. Because like you have a home. Why are you playing doing the laundry? Just go do your laundry. But it never made any sense to me. But I'm sure other people did enjoy it. But there's no role-playing game where you're like, I rolled up. Looks like I rolled up an accountant. Okay. Well, Gerald is going to bravely do year-end. You're rolling up. You got these pencil-thin guys playing Conan.
If you haven't seen it, there's a great channel, at least on Instagram, called Households and Humans, where there are 5 chromatic dragons sitting around a table playing Households and Humans.
Households and Humans, yes.
One guy is an accountant.
Yeah. Well, that works though, because dragons don't work in accounting firms. No. The Sims is in part about bad, wrong fun. Yeah, as I was saying it, I realized that probably was a big attraction to it.
Yeah, just as like I can't be a guy wielding a 2-handed sword, down the street. The police tend to frown on that. Slaying dragons. You could be a thief, right? Like you wouldn't be a thief in life, but it sure would be fun to pretend to steal like awesome jewels.
Yeah. Well, to be able to be that cool, to be, George Clooney from Ocean's 11, to have that sort of cocky, I am going to sneak in to the ogre's den and I'm going to steal the meat off of their forks, Like, it's kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
That, or even the occasional evil campaign.
Yes.
Which, normally you shouldn't stab your fellow players in the back, but all bets are off in that one.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things I found with the boys playing, is that they have very much maintained a level of morality as they play. For all that Touchberry can be chaotic and can be violent and can really, really be a storm of, brutal to his enemies. But he will nevertheless risk his life to save someone else. When he's down to 2 hit points, he will use his magic healing sword to heal someone else before he heals himself. He's stuck to this lawful sense. He's an absolute terror to, orcs. Unredeemably evil. I don't care what Rings of Power says about the orc family. Orcs are unredeemably evil. They must be slaughtered. Evil must be eradicated. That's how I play him. And so he will, no problem, hack apart a whole room full of orcs. But he still has a moral compass. There's a line there he won't cross. And so it's kind of neat to see. It's kind of neat to see how he does it. That's just authentically playing a halfling. What's that thing, Rabowski? I don't know how this came about, because like I had read The Hobbit to them before we played. I think I'd even read Lord of the Rings to them. We hadn't seen the movie, but I'd read it to them before we played. And halflings are like, give me some good ale and a nice steak pie, and that's all I want, and I don't want any trouble with anybody kind of characters, right?
Yeah.
So how he came up with this hyper aggressive, but it's funny. It's funny to think about, right? This little tiny guy just tearing it up. It makes it funny.
So I played a rock gnome barbarian. And it was hilarious. He had like Napoleon syndrome.
That's good. That works.
It's everywhere.
Got to prove himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So now I know that they run their own games too at you had mentioned before at the local gaming store.
Yeah.
Are they still doing that? And like, have you noticed when you're there, not necessarily in the game, but have you noticed like their games kind of leveling up too?
So
greatness.
They were playing in Fleetwood was playing in a game at the Hooded Goblin. That game kind of dissolved. The DM went to college essentially, and so that went away. But now we're running a game night in the parish, and so we've got a group, a whole bunch. It's getting big enough that we think we may have to split it up because we got like 12 people around the table. I mean, it's just getting kind of silly big. But that game, I started out as the DM for it, but handed it over to Fleetwood. So he's now the DM for that. And we started at the Keep on the Borderlands, and he sewed Horror on the Hill into that as well. So he located that on the map. Mm-hmm. And then right now we're just doing his own thing. This series of tunnels which seem to connect all of the important parts of the map, and we don't know why they were built and what, who uses them. So we're exploring those at the moment. But and so watching him DM that, it's interesting. First of all, I see myself as a teenager, doing, I don't want to call it mistakes. It's not mistakes. It's just the way a teenager runs a game is different than the way an adult runs a game. If I were doing it, it would be mistakes. But just watching the way he runs it and the stuff he comes up with, like the star pool, it was such a fascinating idea. I can go into it, but it's a really cool, inventive, clever thing. So that has been a neat thing to watch. Bob Johnny had run a game for me, a sort of one-on-one game for a while, and that just sort of we stopped doing it for, I don't know why, but we haven't played it for a while now. But that was always fun, and watching as when we first started, it was just, you enter a room, there's a kobold, you fight the kobold. You go into the next room, there's two kobolds, you fight two kobolds. You go into the next room, there's a goblin, and there was no sense to it. There's no story. But now he's developing a very rich story around it. It's actually quite complicated. And Touchberry did the same thing. He ran a game, it was a while ago, but he ran a game with Bob Johnny and I as players, and it was quite involved. And it was castle full of goblins and what they were, their baleful influence on the area. It was all pretty cool.
And Midnight Slayer reminds us, don't forget Pyromaniac. Touchberry's definitely a pyro. But that's another thing. Little boys always go through that burning things phase. So that you could do this imaginatively and not risk your house.
Yes, I see the question: ever add real fire to terrain, or just LED imitations? No real fire. Foam does not react well to it. Foam does not like fire, and since most of the terrain I build is out of foam, no. Yeah, the real rivers and everything like that. That sounds like really cool, and such a fiddly nightmare to put together. To keep it from leaking, I just do like a good layer of Mod Podge is my water. Like, I don't even bother with the stuff you mix together. Wow, Alzheimer's does not run in my family. It gallops. What is this stuff? Two things and you mix them together and they become a what is that called? Epoxy. I don't even bother with the epoxy. I just do glossy Mod Podge for water. But the fish tank pump, the whole thing. I mean, that would be awesome.
I would see that if you want to make a big splash at Gen Con.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But like for a home game,
if you're at that level, yeah. If you're for a home game, might be a bit much. But just Cloud River, treat the foam. Yeah, but the issue I would have though, command post gaming is where two pieces had to meet up. Like if you had one huge honking 8x4 sheet of foam, hard to get that to the campaign though. So how they must have had it broken into smaller pieces. So how they manage the joints, I don't know. I don't know. You built models that integrate, like models, like as in like a Messerschmitt or something, or a Spitfire that blew up, or models like terrain things. That sounds extraordinarily violent.
Yeah. Putting model rocket engines in a dragon's mouth or something.
We have those. We did model rocketry for a while. That would be dangerous. World War II ships. Cool. Have you seen those videos of it's all, middle-aged men at like a pond, and they have these model ships, and they're like 5-6 feet long, destroyers and battleships and stuff, and they're all remote controlled, and they have little guns, and they steer them out, bang, 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 little BB guns shooting at each other. Crazy.
I didn't see that. I did see recently, which I thought was very weird. It was Chinese guys made a model of one of the U.S.'s aircraft carriers that they were putting in a pond.
And I think that's espionage, Young. It's just espionage.
Video said they were trying to discover like weaknesses.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, by putting a model in a pond, I don't know about that.
Well,
Because the oceans certainly are no more tumultuous than a pond.
No, it's just fine. I love the newspaper article, Chinese Navy hiding submarines underwater. What won't they think of next? Those sneaky bastards.
The last place we would look.
Yes, of course they're underwater. That's their submarines. It's in the name. Oh well. Recovering the water at the end of its course would be problematic. Well, that's what the pump is for. They could get a tube down at the bottom of the river, and it cycles underneath, I suppose, buried in the terrain. It cycles up so it just keeps flowing. To me, it's the joints. That's where it's got to.
Yeah, because it would be easy to leak out.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're matching up two pieces of the river's course, anywhere it matched, I would think that would just be a nightmare. But that's why I don't do it, and others do.
Let's see, Michael Brown.
Did fireworks and minis. I tell you what I did when I was a kid: plastic soldiers and fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could go back in time and kick myself in the teeth, I'd do it. I took fireworks and I would pry open the hands of Star Wars figures and put them in there. I probably scorched, melted, or blew apart about $1,000 worth of Star Wars toys in today's market if I'd held on to them. Because I had them all. I had Han, I had Luke, I had Leia, I had Chewie, and and all the poses and the Hoth costume and the Bespin costume and everything. Star Wars, Empire, everything. Oh, and I just melted their faces off like a complete dork.
Yeah, we used to use G.I. Joes.
Yeah.
They had a whole body that you could shove a small firecracker up inside.
I know. Oh, well, the great thing with Joes, though, was taking them apart, mix and match.
Oh, that's true.
On top of Scarlet, it was all over the place. Arms, akimbo, and different, that was fun. Glass bullet holes in them. Oh, man. Yeah, the things we did. That's why those things are so expensive, those old toys, right? Because we destroyed them. We played.
I will say, if you did that to the vehicles, that could be pretty cool, because then it's like battle damage.
Yeah. Well, they even sold battle damage, battle damage X-Wing.
Yes.
Do you remember the battle damage He-Man with a plate on the chest? You'd hit the plate and it would spin around and there'd be a scar or something. That was crazy.
Yeah, I think there was like one or two slashes on it.
Yeah.
We had so much better toys back then.
We did.
Happened to kids.
Yeah, stupid kids.
I know. On all of our lawns. It's just So I think we are probably nearing the end of the show. Any big plans? Any things people should watch out for on the channel?
Well, I am going to take the Shreddies box and add foam core to it, and I'm going to texture that. Part of the reason I never got the tower done is I kept going back and forth. I really wanted to make a playable interior.
Oh,
but that would be so insanely complicated because it would be very crowded. If you look at an actual, because I modeled it on a Scottish border tower. It's actually they were belonged to the English to guard the border with Scotland against reavers who'd come down and steal things and cause chaos and then run back up to Scotland. And those tower keeps were very small, right? I mean, we think of these castles as being a huge thing, but most castles were quite twee, really. And to get everything in there and to get it done, it would have just been a nightmare of fiddliness. And so I finally decided, no, if I try to do that, I will never do it. I'm just going to clad the Shreddies box in foam core. It'll be easier. Put where the door is, I'll cut windows in and paint the inside black, and that'll be enough. So that's what I'm going to do.
that makes sense.
And I mean, and because I've now have the studio done here, it sounds so, it's a basement with some lights in it.
Well, how all YouTube studios are.
Yeah. Well, it's a couple ring lights and a couple LED pads, for the back wall. But since I have that now finally finished, I'm able to start recording again. I hadn't recorded a video since October. A recap video like that. I've been doing shorts, which I just do wherever, and I had some old material that I had never edited from my Game Shop game, which is now migrated away from the Game Shop, but we still call it the Hooded Goblin game. I did a couple of recaps of that game, and I had that footage, so I edited those. But I haven't been able to do a regular sit down and record for since October. So I'm finally able to do that now, and so I'm get back up on my feet in doing the regular recaps. That's coming.
So pinned at the top of the chat over in YouTube, which I don't think I've seen anyone watch this on Rumble. So on YouTube, you can find a link to the Dungeon Ministers channel. Keep up,
Thank you,
Honeywood crew, and see what else he's got going on. And also Nerd Council of Doom.
Boom.
At the Nerd Council of Doom. We will be back for the new year on January. Let me double check.
24th.
Yeah, 24.
So 24 or 26. I couldn't remember which one it was.
24.
24. Okay.
So yeah, we will be there. And have you gotten dates for this year's Claricon?
I have. Recently announced on a live stream on my channel. It is October 23rd through 25th of this year. It's 23rd through 25th. It is October 23rd through 25th in beautiful downtown Glen Williams,
So
Ontario.
It's later this year, isn't it?
What's that?
It's a week or two later, isn't it?
No, it's actually a little earlier. It's actually around the same time. It's slightly earlier just because the last weekend of October is Halloween. And I didn't want to step on, I'm going to trick or treat with my kid. I don't want to, because I want to trick or treat with my kids too. I don't go to the door asking for the candy. I just shake down my children afterward, like any good self-respecting adult would do. You don't need all of those. So and one of the vendors was like, you're aware that Halloween is the last weekend of October. I said, ooh, yeah, I can't do that. So we're a bit earlier, but not much earlier.
So if you want to play some great old school gaming and head up, if you're around the Toronto area, go check it out.
Yeah, come on up. And I tell you, we have people who come 2 years now. Ye Old Geek has come over from Britain. This last time he brought IQ, Intellectual Quandary, another Brit over. Bandits Keep comes up from New York, and Hexed Press. The first and second year he wasn't able to come up this past year, but he's hoping to this coming con up from New York. And yeah, people from all over the place come up. A couple guys drove up from Kentucky, so people come from all over. And it really kind of befuddles my parishioners. Like, hang on, they came from the United Kingdom to play games? So yeah. And visit friends, which is a big thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool, though.
Yeah. Bear and Grumpy Old Slan come in from Montreal, which is cool. Yeah.
Nice.
All sorts of good folks. So.
Uh-oh. All these people have blocked me online.
Well, then don't come. Or do come, and then you can have access to them.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Padre, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Great, as always, to talk to you outside of Nerd Council events.
Yes.
And please give my best to the family, and apologize to the missus for keeping you up so late.
Not a problem. You just got back from work, actually, so no worries. All right. Thanks a lot, and have a very good evening, everyone.
Yeah, and I think I will be back tomorrow. I think I'm actually going to do a draw stream sometime tomorrow evening, working on some various arts for Empire of the Undying Sun. So if you're bored, come check it out.